Welcome back.
Hello.
It is the first episode of the year. How do we feel? Did you miss us? Did you miss recording, filming?
Maybe.
I'm going to take that as a yes. I hope everyone's year has been great so far. I hope it gets greater, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, let's get into it.
All right. So to start off the year, even though we're a month into the year by the time this episode comes out,
Still early
I think,
enough.
yeah.
Yeah.
Even though January's been very long, so it's
Yeah.
kind of surprising we didn't get an episode out in January. But for the month, we're going to be talking about distractions, right? And tonight specifically, we're going to talk about our attitude and how that can become a distraction or help us, right? So, I'm also going to warn all of the viewers and you right now.
Okay.
I have been doing so much archery stuff since we last recorded.
Oh my gosh. Is
That-
that all you're going to be talking about?
Most of my examples are going to be archery related, especially after this weekend because I just came from
I hope I can relate.
So it's, it's going to be a lot of arrow talk. Okay.
He's a straight shooter over here.
So I have a story here, but I don't know how I set it up. So I can't even ask you any questions about it. Like your thoughts on things.
Right?
So I'm out of practice on writing the outlines for the episode. So I had to rewrite everything this morning. My original was really bad. Talking about distractions, right? Or have you ever been distracted to the point where you lost on something really important?
Oh, for sure.
Care to share?
I'm definitely I've definitely missed deadlines, be it in school, never in work, I don't think, because I don't really have deadlines with the work that I do, but in school I've definitely missed deadlines either for submitting assignments or probably applications or something for that. Because I tend to procrastinate and I get distracted. If you've watched this podcast, you know that I get distracted, and that's in a simple conversation. So let alone in real life things, I get very distracted very easily.
I'm totally with you on that. The amount of times you had to cut out me asking, "What did you ask?"
Yeah.
As I'm answering the question. So one of the things, we're gonna just jump right into the archer analogies, okay, guys?
Brace yourself.
So when you're on the shooting line, you're pretty close to people, right? So
is it closer than this?
yes.
Okay.
Realistically, within these panels, I'm pretty sure two people would be shooting. I would be on that corner, you'd be on that one. So we're very close,
goodness.
right? Because I think it's a 2 feet thing for each lane or whatever.
Okay.
So people get so hyper focused on where their arrow went after they're done shooting that they will just turn around and walk off the line while other people are at full draw, holding an arrow, trying to aim and shoot. So the day before I went to that out of town for that tournament, one of we're all shooting to get prepped for the tournament. This one kid, he kept turning and hitting my leg with his bow while I'm at full draw, and I'm like, dude, okay, you didn't know the first time. We're 5 times in, right? But I can see what he's doing. He's literally there his head is still looking at where his arrow, and he just turned, and I'm like, you're so hyper, your attitude is, I have to shoot really well. So he became so hyper focused on where the arrows went that nothing else mattered. Question. Okay, yes.
Why not just stand and wait and see and then walk?
So the line etiquette is that we have 2 minutes to shoot 3 arrows per round, right? if you finish before 2 minutes is up, the proper etiquette says look left and like it's like you're crossing the street. See if anyone next to you is shooting.
No, I mean, like, why not just wait, look to see where his arrow went, and then leave?
It's 18 meters away, right? If you're shooting an arrow that's the size of a pen, you really can't tell where it is. Especially if you put so many holes in the target already, all you're seeing is dark spots like downrange. So you really can't tell.
Looking for?
That's the problem.
Oh.
That's
Okay.
that's also the problem. Like right now when I shoot, I actually have binoculars around my neck. So like if I want to check, I can, because like I can maybe see it, but most times, you really can't.
Okay.
But it's fine if you want to stay there and try and lean in and like squint and see it. Cool, but don't do this and then with your bow turn around like that. And I'm 2 lanes over and he was hitting me. Yeah, so it was really weird because his attitude was kind of correct in the sense like I want to shoot good, but he became so hyper focused that he was messing up things for everyone else.
Okay.
Right? Like the guy that was in between him and I, he was not even hitting the target, and he was doing the same thing. And I came really close to telling him, "Stop looking. You know you didn't hit."
That's not very nice.
But that's why I didn't say it. But like it was like, dude, like, because he kept hitting me. Like if he didn't hit me, I really wouldn't have cared, right? Like I get it, you want to know what you hit, but I was like, you don't have to hit me every time you look downrange. But again, we're talking about our attitude, right? And if you want to have a great attitude, you have to be where your feet are. Meaning, you need to be aware of what's going on around you. Not just what like your end goal is or whatever it is you're working towards, but be situationally aware of what's happening. Be emotionally aware, spiritually aware, right? Because what happened with those two guys is, though they're aware and focused on what's happening downrange, they're not focused on what's happening right next to them, right? Because, every time they did it, I was at like full draw about to shoot an arrow. So eventually I had to realize, okay, they shot 3. Let me give them a second to get off the line and then pull my bow back, right? But again, you have to be aware, right? So with that said, right? Attitude, how would you define it?
Oh, attitude. I feel like that's a hard question.
I genuinely couldn't think of something. I had to look it up.
How do you define attitude? I guess like because it's not like your personality, because that's different, but it's I guess your reactions to things. I don't know.
I think your reactions may be a result of your attitude. Yeah.
I don't think I've ever had. I've never thought about that. How?
So, because for me, I was gonna say it's your behavior, but even then, I think to what you said with reaction, it's your attitude determines your behavior.
Yeah.
So when I looked it up, it said a settled way of thinking or feeling about someone or something, typically one that is reflected in a person's behavior.
Okay.
Right. So I think for us to understand someone's attitude, we have to see their behavior. For the most part, I mean, they can share their attitude, but I think a lot of times someone's attitude towards something because of the way they're acting towards it.
More often than not. Okay.
Right? So, like, you react badly to something because your attitude towards it might be that or whatever, right? Oh, I thought you were going to say something.
I was, but then I stopped. Because, I mean, like, a lot of people are just really good at hiding, like,
well, there's,
you know what I mean? Like, masking their behavior.
There's that, too. But, so, when it comes to our attitude, right? And you have, it says, of course I lost it. A subtle way of thinking or feeling about something or someone, right? When I think about attitude as believers, right? Everything points us towards, well, what is the purpose God has for us, right? And how does our attitude affect it? Because that's what we're talking about when we're going to talk about how do things distract us? Distract us from what, right? God's purpose for us, right? And what he wants us to do with our lives. So have you ever looked at like, well, what is the important things to focus in on?
Are you back?
Yeah,
Oh.
sorry, I was asking. Yeah.
Have I looked at like what are the important things to focus on in terms of what?
In terms of what does God want you to focus on?
Oh, for sure. Have I asked myself that? Yeah, I think so. Because I also get caught up in like all the little details that sometimes, or more off, like generally don't matter. So I find myself having to recenter and refocus a lot of times.
Okay. Okay, we're definitely going to come back to that because that's something I want to talk about. Like, how do we get recentered?
Okay.
But so one of the things, or there's a couple of things I think the Bible kind of outlines for us that should be important, right? I think as believers, ultimately, there's the Great Commission, right, to go into all the world and make disciples, right? But then there's some other things, right, that I think in support of the Great Commission directly impact your attitude, right? So the first one that I only pulled three. I'm sure you can find more in the Bible, but this is, a short podcast. So Matthew 22:37, right? And I believe all of my scriptures tonight are NIV except for one, right? But Matthew 22:37 says, Jesus replied, love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind, right? So, again, just attitude and purpose, right? If you're saying that your purpose is to love the Lord your God with all your heart, and with all your soul, and with all your mind, you have to have the right attitude to do that, right? If you have an attitude of, well, I don't really care about church or reading my Bible every day or praying, or being in a community of believers or worshiping God or singing praises to him and things like that, right? It becomes really, really hard to then go and say that you love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind. Next, there's Mark 12:31, right? And it says, and the second is this, love your neighbor as yourself, for there's no greater commandment than these, right? I don't know why I ended up pulling the same passage from two different places, but
next verse of Matthew.
That's just how I ended up writing it down. So again, right, love your neighbor as yourself, right? It's really hard to love your neighbor when you have a bad attitude towards people, right? And then the last one I pulled was Matthew 25:35-36. For I was hungry, and you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty, and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger, and you invited me in. I needed clothes, and you clothed me. I was sick, and you looked after me. I was in prison, and you came to visit me. And this scripture was kind of talking about just taking care of the people who are in need of care, right? So again, if you have an attitude towards people of, well, I don't want to associate with you because of whatever, right? It becomes really hard to love people. And clearly, one of our motivating factors as a believer is a love for God and equally a love for people, right? So if your attitude doesn't line up with that, right, or your attitude is different, it distracts from these things. So I feel like I know the answer to this, but have you taken a lot of road trips?
A decent amount.
Okay. Have you taken a lot of road trips where you're the main driver?
Maine? Not really, but
Okay. So, I don't know if we've ever talked about this, but I have like the worst luck with tires in my cars.
we have not.
I've had 1, 2, 3, 4. This is my fifth car. All but one car within 6 months of getting it, a tire has blown. Like, not even like it couldn't be patched. Had to buy a new tire or used tire or whatever, right? So, to the point where I think 2 years ago when I was going to Lancaster, as I am coming off of the Van Wyck, I hit a pothole and popped a tire as I was coming off the Van Wyck and had to buy a new tire that night as I drove like 20 minutes before I just met up with friends to drive 3 hours into Lancaster. So for me, typically if I'm on a road trip and I'm the main driver, right, there's certain things I want to check, right? I want to make sure the car has gas, right? I want to check the tires, make sure pressure and stuff is good. Just drove to Lancaster. It's cold, it's snowing and stuff like that. You know, make sure
you
that
have the right tires.
Make sure you have the right tires, right? The other thing I do is you want to make sure the car is clean because typically you have other people in the car with you. You don't want people just sitting in a mess. And then right now, I mean, it's cold now, so like, does the heat in your car work, right? If it's somewhere, does the AC work, right? We tend to have like, and it's funny because like, I was driving to Lancaster over the weekend, and the friend I was driving with, she goes, okay, if you're taking care of all that stuff for the car, like what snacks do you want for while we're driving and things like that? Should I pick up breakfast? Because I think we left like 9 or 9:30, you know. So it's like, do you want to pick up breakfast, this and that? Same thing coming back, like what snacks do you need to like stay awake and all that. So it's like, you know, kind of like people have their roles when you're doing these things, right? I think when you have the right attitude, you begin to have this checklist that kind of keeps you in place, right, towards your purpose, right? Because I know there's been times when I've gotten in my car and driving from home to, and this is recently, and as I'm getting on Southern State, I'm hearing ding because I didn't even like look at the gas. Right? And I think I had to like drive straight past the exit because there's like another gas station on the other side. But like, again, my attitude, I was just like, whatever, it's, you know, just doing whatever today. Right? When your attitude is wrong, you miss a lot of things. Right? I don't know if you have anything to like add on to that or relate
I don't
to
play
it.
with my gas levels. I don't.
How low is it before you refill?
Depends on the time of the year. If it's winter, I wouldn't even reach a quarter tank. I don't play, especially because like you never know where you're gonna end up. Right? So I don't like, I've run out of gas and my gas light has come on one time.
Okay.
And that was like, I was picking Lex up from Brooklyn, and it was like there was just a lot of traffic, so I don't know, my gas ran out. And since like that, even then I was like, I should have gotten gas. I was thinking about getting gas before I picked her up, and I was like, no, I should be fine. Like, I'll be cutting it close, but I should be fine. And I cut it too close. But yeah, I don't play with my gas levels. Do you know what I've keep saying I'm gonna get, like, you know those little tire like air machines that you can have just in your car? I keep saying I'm gonna get one of those, and I haven't. But I haven't had any issues with my tires.
Very lucky.
Yeah.
Because I have the tire thing. Like, the amount of times the weather has dropped overnight, and for some reason all my tires just lose air because they got cold, and I've had to refill all of them, is insane. Like, every winter since I've had a car, this has happened to me. So like over 10 years, I've had to at least 2 times a winter, no matter how cold it is, go outside. And then especially my parents' house and my house, either side of the driveway, you can't, like, the driveways are so narrow, you can't do both sides of the car. So you have to wheel the car out onto the, at least by me now, it's easier to do that. No one bothers me. But where they are, you come out a little bit, you're going to get hit by someone or something. So it's super annoying. But yeah. But again, going back to like again, your attitude is, I'm not going to mess around with this. Right? Because did you actually run out of gas and like had to have someone bring gas to you? Okay. But when you get that close, that feeling of
Yeah.
what, like, because like, who am I gonna call, right? Like, really, like, because I was thinking about that one day, like, should I really run out of gas right now? Who am I calling to bring me gas? Who do I know that has a gas tank?
I'd come.
Do you have a gas tank though that you can
Yeah.
fill? Okay, see, I need to know things like that, right? Because I would have to start calling people, right, and be like, "Yo, do you have a gas tank?" Okay, cool. I need you to fill up some gas and bring it, because I'm on the highway just with no gas, right? So, like, it's things like that. Like, you have to actually like think about. But again, now when you're focused on, okay, for you, I have to pick up someone. Or, you know what, like, especially like you said, winter, right? It's winter. You never know when it's going to snow or it's just going to be too cold and things like that. Let me just fill up and be ready, right? Especially like now, like I do my best to just fill up the night before because you don't want to be like waiting till the morning and then you're running late and all that, right? Again, okay, by doing that, I can make sure I'm ready and prepared for whatever's going to happen. And go ahead.
There was one time, not a gas story, but I was picking. We had an event here, and someone had asked me to like pick up some food. I didn't realize they were coming with the food, and so I had my car, which is a 2-door Civic. If I had known other people were coming with me, I would have taken my father's vehicle. But having not realized that they were coming with the food, I also had stuff in my trunk.
How many people were coming with
It was
the food?
2 people, so it wasn't that bad.
It's not that bad in that car.
But to put the food in the trunk, I was like, I wasn't prepared for you to see me like this. Also, it wasn't like crazy messy. There was just boxes in my trunk, so that we could not put the food in the trunk. And it was like, I just got flustered because I was like, I was not prepared for you to come with the food.
So this happened to me 2 weeks ago. I got back off a flight and like we went to like a pastors conference, and there was like some pastors from Guyana at the conference here in the U.S. And one of them, I guess he ended up flying back with us to New York because he was gonna stay with family, then head back home like the next day or two or whatever. So where he was staying was in between my parents' house and my house. I had my car at my parents' house, so I'd go there, grab the car. So I know I have to drop my brother home. And then my dad's just like, oh, yeah, you can just drop this pastor home. And I'm like, oh, I don't even think the back seats in my car are up right now because there's stuff on them. I'm like, this is so like the whole drive from just the airport to my parents' house. I'm just like, where am I going to fit this guy plus his bag? At least he only had one bag. I'm just like, where am I going to fit all this? Right. So now, as soon as we get there, my dad opens the trunk. And I'm like, no, let me open the trunk. And he opens the trunk. He's like, what is all this stuff? And I'm like,
Are we
don't
getting
worry
distracted?
a little bit.
Okay.
But don't, again, distractions, right? So one of the other things, right, going back to the gas analogy, right? Because sometimes I've been like, oh, I'll get gas in the morning. Like you said, I should have enough and things like that. Have you ever had or believed false things about yourself that kind of created a false attitude?
Oh, all the time.
Care to share?
Um,
And
like-
these attitudes became distractions to, God's purpose for your life.
what is the saying? Like, you are your worst critic or whatever. I think a lot of times I have either judged myself too harshly and then created that image of like being less than, or I lost it. It'll come back, but but like, when you judge yourself really harshly and then you're like, okay, maybe I should just not do that anymore. And like you play into your own insecurities that you know that you have. Oh, that's definitely happened many times. Will probably happen again. I'm not even gonna I know myself.
So, I was just thinking of a few to list, and it was like, you're not smart enough, you're not good enough, you don't look good enough for this. You need to lose weight, you need to gain weight, you should be quiet, you should be talking more, right? Like we have this really, I don't want to say everyone does, but a lot of people we have this bad habit of creating these false attitudes about ourselves, right? That get reflected in our behavior, right? Um, you know, I know there's been instances where just being out with friends and stuff, and because people just think, no, I'm like so overweight, and I'm like, I'm the biggest person in the group right now. There's no way you're like unhealthily overweight, if that makes sense, right? And it's like, we go out to eat, and it's like, okay, I'm just gonna like eat like 2 fries and that's it. And I'm like, don't go and starve. Like, now you're starving yourself, right? Like, that's not any better than what you were like, thing. Like, just have a little bit of food or stuff like that. But you see it happen a lot where people have these false ideas about themselves, and then when they have to do certain things, there's no confidence in what they're doing, right? And I think what ends up happening is these false attitudes, these distractions often come at a high cost, right? Especially in church, because one of the things my dad had shared with me when I started taking on more leadership roles in church was you never know if that person that comes to church, if that's the last time they're going to hear the gospel.
Okay.
Right? I'm kind of paraphrasing how he said it, right? But the reason he said that was, okay, with whatever I'm in charge of, did I do the best I can to make sure that they have the opportunity to connect with the gospel and Jesus, right? So whether that was like the Easter and Christmas plays, running sound, running whatever, right? Did people have the best opportunity we can give them to meet with Jesus, right? Did we facilitate that properly, right? And I think sometimes, like for me, I know, because we still get in trouble for it sometimes. Like if you're distracted when you're running sound, right? It can come at a high cost because you can mess up what's happening on stage. Same thing with like the lyrics or live stream or whatever, right? All those types of things, right? Same thing here. I went on a tangent at least for however long. But these things happen, right? And it comes at a high cost of the gospel, right? And I was just thinking of other things, but like if you're distracted while driving, right? Because I remember when texting and driving like became a thing, and then like every day on the news it was like you shouldn't text and drive, right? They had like all these like ad campaigns against texting and driving, right? Even if I don't know how much work you've done with like power tools and saws and things like that, but someone I know, he was putting together some shelving very recently, so it's like he's like, they have like a small like broom closet, so they just bought wood, they're putting together some shelves. And he legitimately has his hand here and just went through like that fatty part, and there was another girl there with him like watching what he's doing, and she's like, Bob, like what are you doing? And he's like, oh, and he just put the drill in reverse it out. He's like, oh, okay, I'm okay. And she's like, you're bleeding. He's like, it's whatever, right?
What?
Now he's been in like carpentry and all these types of jobs for like a very long time. Like he just retired and stuff, but it was just like, oh, okay, right? But it happened because he got distracted, right? There was.
So he didn't go all the way through.
Yes, he did. There was a hole in his hand, but he didn't hit anything like important. But yeah, he went through.
Okay.
Yeah, I wasn't there that day when that happened. But like it's so funny because I saw him the next day, and she's telling me the story about it. Dude's like 76 or something. Whatever, And then
I aspire to that level of
And
nonchalance.
then-
I can't.
she's telling me the story. She's still freaking out. And I'm like, hey, man, like, what happened to your hand? He's like, putting together some shelves. Things happen. I'm like, okay. But yeah, yeah, that's what happens when you get distracted. Like, there's like the right way to put together a bow, and then there's like shortcuts. But with the shortcuts, if you're not paying attention, the bow can like fly at your face, and that's the only place it's gonna hit, and it's gonna. So he was like showing me what to do, and I was like, he's like, yeah, like, or no, he was showing someone else what to do, and he goes, you really shouldn't do this because you'll end up like me, and you can see here he has like 2 scars over his eye from when the bow clocked him in the face. And we're just like, well, what happened? He's like, you're doing it, you're talking to people, you get distracted, you forget to keep the tension in the bow, and boom, you slapped in the face, right?
And 2 scars, so it's happened more than
Yes.
once.
It's probably happened more than twice, if we're being honest. But again, distractions can come at a high cost if we're not careful, right? And 2 Corinthians, for chapter 1, verses 3 and 4. I don't know why I couldn't read that. It says, "Praise be to the God and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, the Father of compassion and the God of all comfort, who comforts us in all troubles, so that we can comfort those in trouble with the comfort we ourselves receive from God." Though we try, because we're not perfect, I think there are times we're going to get distracted, and there are going to be times when sometimes we fail, right? Hopefully not at like an extremely high cost, but there are times when we mess up, right? Like you said, like there's stuff for like, school and things like that. You miss deadlines and things. I know I've done the same thing with school, and I think one year I forgot to almost do my taxes and stuff. Like, luckily, the guy was like, "Hey, are you gonna bring your stuff in?" And I was like, "Oh yeah, I need to do that." He's like, "Yeah." He's like, "I already filed an extension." I'm like, "Okay, cool." So I lucked out on that one, but and then I almost forgot to hand in for the extension date. But what's really great about God is that He knows we're not perfect, right? And though He doesn't want us to mess up, He has grace for when we do, right? And that's what 2 Corinthians 1, 3-4 is talking about, right? The Father of compassion and the God of all comfort, who comforts us in our trouble, so we can comfort those in any trouble with the comfort we receive from God. When we mess up, right, there's grace for us, right? And then God then says, okay, now turn around and show that same grace to the other people who may also mess up and things like that. So, I think that it's really important for us to understand that even when we get distracted and when mistakes happen like that, that we can always come back to God and get refocused and kind of reset, right? The last thing on attitude that I wanted to read is from First Thessalonians 5:16-18. I'm going to read it from the Message translation just because I really like how it says it. It says, "Be cheerful no matter what. Pray all the time. Thank God no matter what happens. This is the way God wants you to belong to Christ Jesus to live." Right?
What chapter was that?
Chapter 5, verses 16-18. Right? Normally it'd be rejoice in all things, pray continually, give thanks. I'm butchering that
Rejoice
scripture.
always, pray continually,
Yeah.
give thanks in all circumstances, for this
Yeah.
is God's will.
Right? So I think, again, when we talk about our attitude, right, we have to be able to be aware of the attitude we have, right, towards people, towards God, and towards anything else that may happen, right? Because God is saying we should be able to rejoice always, pray all the time, right, and give thanks all the time, right? Those are not easy things to do when life is rough, life is hard. Yet that's what he says, this is the way that we're supposed to live if we belong to Jesus Christ. So if you call yourself a Christian, you call yourself a believer, then God is saying, hey, you need to have the right attitude, right? So I think that's just super important. Any closing thoughts?
No.
Okay, then. We're done.
Goodbye.
Bye. See you next week, guys.
Are we doing? This is what we're doing again.
Yep, this is
Okay.
where we're at.